Self-Love, episode 13. We're in the hot seat of our very new and exciting series, How to Hack Your Thoughts. And today is part 3. We've had really great minds on the show, and today we have another guest, and we're going to hear from her shortly on how she hacks her thoughts. So think about it. We are faced with self defeating thoughts. We're faced with so many challenges during the day. And, how do we pull ourselves out of that? How do we set ourselves up for a positive experiences in life? Tonight, Myra Cooke is going to tell us exactly how she does that. Wouldn't you like to get into the minds of people who know how to hack their thoughts or are trying to hack their thoughts? So that's what we're going to bring to you. Today, we have just that person. So stay right there. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the show, The Journey of Self Love. And today we're really excited to have Myra Cooke, all the way from London, to share how she hacks her thoughts and her hacking methodology. Hi, Myra. Nice to see you on the show.
Hi, Chloe. It's good to see you again as well.
Okay, so are we ready to share what's going on in that brilliant mind of yours?
I think you've raised the expectations.
Uh, okay, right. Life is filled with silences, with noise. We hear voices. We influence people. Like in your role as a talent officer, you are influencing people every day. I'm doing it every day. We influence each other, and other people influence us. So
Right.
you know. Um, we try and create silence. Well, you heard the term silence is golden.
Yeah.
If silence is golden for you, what are you usually saying to yourself?
I think when we say silence is golden, it's obviously that term in itself is quite positive, right? It's about stopping or pausing. So there's something about in silence. There's something about facing certain truths when you are quiet and you stop. And it's an opportunity or a moment to basically figure out who you are without the noise and bustle that's constant in our lives. So for me, I think in stillness, and there's a moment of mindfulness because it's in that moment that you can actually pause and reflect. So, and those deeper reflections are actually quite healing as well. So, when you stop and start looking in a positive way inside and revisiting where, what are you thinking about more positively, there's a certain level of healing that can start to take place in your thoughts, because that's where
Mm,
the biggest issues start. It's in our thoughts and what we start to feed ourselves in terms of our thinking, and that's normally linked to our feelings and our emotions, which is a big draining source of energy. So when it's golden, there's less of a chance, I think, of activating that primordial part of your brain,
mm,
which is where those feelings tend to emanate from. And rather, we start to focus more on, if it's done properly, positively, we start to activate our frontal lobes, which is where better decisions are made, right? And
mm,
where we're able to think much more rationally and with greater clarity. And I say this with experience because I used to be heavily led by how I was feeling. And the emotions will drive some self beliefs about myself, or will impact my core beliefs, and therefore I made I made negative assumptions about who I thought I was and what I was doing. But when you start to actually open up to the experience of silence and see that as an opportunity to just be you, your most authentic self, without the distractions and avoidance of life's problems, then I think there's something about much deeper that one can actually bring out to the surface. And so it's about being really intentional
Mm-hmm.
about it. And that's the thing. If we're not intentional, and that's, I guess we talk about it, emotional intelligence, self awareness, and self
Mm-hmm.
regulation, and all of that. But it's actually true. You actually, in the moment, you need to actually stop yourself from
Yeah.
reverting back to poor behavior and bring yourself back to
Mm-hmm.
actually, why am I thinking that about myself? Is this true?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the worst thing that could happen, if I went down that route? So it's really very intentional about how you hack your thoughts, because you actually have to stop in that moment and say, nope, let's revisit that.
Yes. I like what you just said. You said open up to the experience of silence and being intentional. And the only way we can open up to that experience is by stopping and pausing.
Yeah.
Also, with emotional intelligence is being aware. This is what's going on right now. I'm
Mm,
aware of this. I'm going to intentionally, with deliberation,
mm,
stop. So I open up to the experience of silence. I love that.
mm.
Right. When silence, then you have, we hear the term, how often we hear silence is golden, but we also hear the term silence is deafening,
Yeah.
right? So what
Yeah.
does that mean to you? What are you saying to yourself?
I think that's the other end of the spectrum, right? You've got the zenith and the nadir. So I think it's the other end of the spectrum. So for me, when silence is deafening, it's when you stop and suddenly have to think or focus in the silence, and you're not ready for it,
Yeah.
right? You're not ready for it. So we have this ability to constantly move, and be in the midst of noise and distractions, and it helps us. We want to stay there. There's a reason why we actually want to stay there, because we don't want to face up to or
Mhm.
deal with certain things that may be at the back of your head, which may be painful or sad
Mhm.
or just upsetting in some way. So busyness and distraction is the better alternative to the
Mhm.
deafening silence, and or the threatening silence, as I see it, because you can tend to catastrophize unnecessarily. And I know for a fact I'm one of those individuals that can take something that's pretty small and might be insignificant in somebody else's mind, and it explodes like a nuclear explosion in
Yeah.
my head about the worst case scenario. So I'd rather be distracted and really busy doing other stuff than actually stopping and having to actually think about it. So silence being deafening is also when you are, so a really good example, Chloe, and you can relate, is being in a different country on your own. So it's not about loneliness, but it's about that level of isolation, right?
Mhm.
When I'm busy, I don't really focus on it too much, that I'm so far away from family and friends and loved ones. But when I actually have to stop and look around the house, or with my daughter not being here, etc., then I have to think, actually, oh, I really don't want to get into my head anymore than
Mhm.
this. I'd rather be busy. So it can be quite, it can be like, you get that sense of missing people, and there's an emptiness that you actually have to face up to. So
Mhm.
that's balancing that silence is golden, and taking that moment to look after yourself versus silence is deafening. And I don't want to think about it, because all of these negativity, or people may have said something to me as well. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, and I have a very similar experience once when Jethro moved out,
Mm,
and I was living alone. That sense of emptiness, and
yes.
Jethro has big feet. He's a big guy. He has a
Yeah.
size, 13, US size 13 shoes on my wooden floors were not
Mm,
there anymore. The
mm,
thump of his feet. So that created a loneliness and an echo in the house. When Apollo barks, it now echoes.
yeah.
It didn't
Yeah.
echo before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And I like what you're talking about, what you said about busyness and distractions is a great way to hide.
Yes.
We want to hide in the busyness and the distractions because we're not ready to face up to what is this here. Do I
Yeah.
want to deal with it? Uh,
Yeah.
it's just it's a Is it escapism? Is it avoidance? It's just not wanting to deal with it. I'm not ready to deal with it. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are negative thoughts that go through your mind when there is noise?
God, where do I start? There's lots of
Yeah,
negative thoughts that
all of
go.
us go there. Don't worry.
I think for me, by nature, I'm introverted, so
Yeah,
I tend to be a natural reflector
yeah.
about things. So for me, it's usually around conversations that I may have had that have affected me, or how I showed up in that conversation, and or and I'm quite sensitive. So there's things that I would, the negative thoughts about why didn't I say something differently or better, or why didn't that person see beyond that? So that's the negative thoughts. It's always around conversations, words, narratives, or feedbacks that shared with me, and I can take that quite deeply. So and then I'm always looking at what I did wrong. That's
Mm,
the negative, right? Is am I difficult, or could I be different? And then I think when you internalize that a lot, it can drag you down into a very deep and dark hole.
mhm,
Those negative thoughts can do that.
mhm,
So if I had to rationally weigh the good and then the gifts that I actually have versus what I am thinking about, then I actually tend to see that the good actually far outweighs that negative that I'm thinking, or seeing or hearing and receiving from others. And then that in itself is again a natural opportunity for me to pause, to stop from the negativity, and then shift my thought patterns into gear so that my frontal lobe kicks in, as opposed to that
mhm.
that primordial brain.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really around how I receive information and what people say to me, because being introverted, you don't express yourself as much or as outwardly as an extrovert in terms of how you think, how you feel. A lot of it takes place on the inside. So
Mhm,
people see something else, and so they don't necessarily communicate the right things about you. So rather than reacting and saying, actually, you're wrong, that's not true, I internalize. And so that's my negative thought pattern, that's why I need to hack those thoughts and go back
mhm.
away from emotion into rationality.
Yeah, yeah. The people that are introverted, you don't hear what their thoughts are because they're not sharing it. Someone that's extroverted will have the courage to speak up, and
Mm,
I'm kind of similar where I didn't have the courage in the past. Now I have a percentage or a portion or some courage, but it took experiences and it took
yeah.
like learning and doing it over and over again, to be able to have the courage to say something. And also, you talked about when we go in a negative place, it's easy to downward spiral.
Yes.
We
Uh,
allow ourselves to get to stay there.
It's hard to dig yourself out of that.
Yeah,
If you leave it for too long, it's
yeah.
hard to dig yourself out
Mm,
of it. And sometimes some people, that's when people end up in therapy and
mm,
stuff like that. It's because they've gone so far down that hole
yeah.
that they can't come back out of it themselves. And that's when you have to. And that's why these healthy patterns that you're talking about, hacking your thoughts, it has to be really intentional and practical and daily. When I say daily, actually more than once in a day, there's certain things you have to activate in your day-to-day routines to make sure you are being really self-aware.
Yeah, that's so true. It's
Mm,
getting it exact before it goes down that before the downward spiral.
yeah.
So, and also something that you shared is being able to access positivity. Uh,
Mm,
and things, I always, but even when I'm coaching, I always say to someone when they go in there in that negative place, I basically will ask the question, well, think about a time where you had a similar experience and how did you overcome that? Because if
mm,
you did it before, something inside of you exists that will
mm,
allow you to do it again.
mm.
So understanding we all have our power and we all have our personal successes, and strengths that there's giants inside of us,
Yes.
that says you can do that. You can actually do this.
Yes, yeah, that's so good because it's all in the brain as well, in your mind. So
Yeah.
people are always looking for things like CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy to help change your patterns of
Mhm.
thought. But now there's this whole concept, and in America in particular, they talk about dialectical,
Yeah.
therapy, and I think that's good because it talks about the
Yeah.
wise mind. And
Yes.
so I think there's something about how do we bring our wise mind to the forefront of all
Mhm.
of these patterns of thinking.
Right. So, talking about wise mind,
Mm.
have you experienced a time when you had to hack positive thoughts?
Whoa. I, you know, this is a difficult one because normally when you get positive thoughts, you want to keep them. But I think for me, when I've hacked my positive thoughts, it's intended to be. I had, you have to think about this. Has been in relationships when you get complimented quite a lot about who you are, and you see this. They seeing this amazing sort of person, and my brain is saying, are they talking about me? It's like literally cutting the positive out because you can't see that, in terms of how they see you. You don't see yourself in the same way. So
Mhm.
for me, my personal experience is when I'm complimented about certain things, or and especially, recently I've had a really positive relationship, and you're getting all these positive feedback. But what it does is actually it puts you in a position where you're sort of sabotaging something that's good, by trying to hack the positive energy and the feedback that's coming towards you. And so you
Mhm.
go back into that full loop cycle again about
Yeah.
how do I actually stop doing that,
Yeah.
and hack those thoughts in my head and actually start receiving
Mhm.
the goodness that's being sent your way and that's coming to you.
Yeah, I like that. It's self-sabotage,
Mm,
because we have limiting beliefs,
mm,
and if something happened to me in the past, it's going to happen again.
yeah,
Why I don't get, and also just certain people have this experience, have this thinking, I don't deserve this.
yeah.
I don't deserve this. I shouldn't, so you want to hack what that is. Um, so, can you share a positive thought that you had to hack? Can you, and why you did it? How did that serve you? Or even thinking about the right now when you talked about your relationship and all the compliments.
I think, so when you hack a positive thought, I can't see it as being something that's going to lead to anywhere positive, right? Because a positive thought is actually, it feeds good behavior. It feeds positive actions. So for me, it was about, I've been through quite a journey of, stuff that's happened from a negative perspective. So to get now to a position where you're receiving this positive feedback, that hack for me was, is that actually true? Is this a facade? I mean, or what's the end goal? Why is this person saying that, for example?
Mhm.
Or is it just a bit over the top? And
Mhm.
I think there's also something about our personalities. When you have a tendency to be coming from, from Africa, we tend to be either direct or humble in a
Yeah.
way. We don't do over the top compliments. And when you're introverted as well, that actually becomes less, even more contained. So
Yeah.
if you are overly like given all of this, and then you think, yeah, I have a tendency to go into critical analysis.
Mm.
And that was my hack around the positive. It's like, okay, I've not sort of heard that along that trajectory of my lifespan and relationships. So I don't understand if this is just, temporary, and when's the boredom going to set in, and therefore where are we going with this? So that's the negative hack. I mean, that's the hack that goes from
Mm.
something that's positive and basically dilutes it into something that's more very negative and doesn't necessarily lead to positive outcome.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
Hmm.
Okay, so Myra, we're going to be getting to the close of our session today, or this episode. What
Hmm.
is something that you would like to share with those listening to this podcast on how to hack their thoughts?
I think arm yourself with tools. I think if we think we can fix ourselves, or it's not really about fixing ourselves. We're not some sort of a machine. So, but what's been really useful, I would advise, is gaining knowledge on how to help yourself. And if you want to do it yourself, there's tools out there, there's resources that one can do. And then there's about building small routines daily. It's like brushing your teeth every morning and in the evening. If you put routine into your life, it becomes habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So start putting small little routines into your life so that you build up natural habit over a period of time to take care of yourself, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's prayer, whether it is stopping in the moment when you going through those negative thoughts and saying, actually, just pause. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Let's revisit that and be really logical and rational about that. And so you fight it. So you sort of, it's like debating that negative thought with positive.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And even though it's just a thought, it is monumental in how we experience life and how our experiences are shaped every day.
Yeah.
And this is something that we do in coaching, tiny steps. One small step in that direction helps us get there. Just small, tiny step, a tiny shift.
Yeah. My final thing on that, Chloe, would be that sometimes we hold core beliefs that's not true because of experiences and our history.
Mhm.
So there's something about revisiting what your core beliefs are that generalizes around individuals, populations, or just assumptions about things. So I think sometimes we have to step away and revisit our core beliefs and figure out if they're true or not because it's affecting my thoughts.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Mm.
Is this core belief serving me?
Yes,
How
exactly.
is it serving me? And if I continue down this path,
Mm.
what, what could happen? What would the outcome be? So understand also seeing what is a possible outcome if I
Yes.
go down this path. If
Yeah.
I pivot to something else, what is a positive outcome there?
Mm.
So
Correct.
it's choices, making choices on a everyday basis. Myra, it's been a pleasure having you. Is there a quote that comes to mind that you'd like to end with?
I read a quote recently, and it is by, I think, an American psychologist, which I will share. It says, "The power of loving and being yourself is that even if nobody is around, you're always in great company." So I thought it was quite useful. And it's by somebody called Sandra Silva Casabianca. So I think from a psychology magazine. I think it's important to think
Hmm.
about ourselves that we are great company and we
Hmm.
should love ourselves.
Yeah. The this whole That's a fantastic quote. This
Mm,
whole podcast series came from that. When
mm,
I was on my own and Jethro had moved out, I had to learn how to enjoy my own company
mm.
because I thought, okay, Chloe, you're gonna be with yourself for the rest of your life, and you're gonna have more conversations with yourself than with anybody else. So start loving yourself.
Yeah.
That's how the podcast was birthed. Thank you so much, Myra, for being on the show. And, everybody, like always, I end our shows with this quote of mine: Your story is changing, and you are the storyteller of your story. Your story are your thoughts. Your thoughts are your self talk. You are becoming your thoughts. So, what you tell your brain is what your brain remembers. And here's what really matters: who you're becoming is greater than who you were before this moment. So please, if you have a way to hack your thoughts that you want to share with everybody, go ahead and just drop that in the chat, and get ready for another mind hacking conversation with an exciting guest for next week. Remember, powerful declarations are inside of you waiting to be manifested. Until next time, see you soon.